Welcome back to the Diving Into Sports podcast with your hosts Lyle
and Nash.
Henry. Let's dive into today's topic. The Isco Championship, renamed from Barbasol, is this week and we're going on Sunday. But it starts tomorrow on Thursday. So we're here to break it down and give our insight into what we think about the field and who we think is going to win. It's a pretty good field, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, the alternate event to the Scottish Open. Better field than last year, though, because of the new designated events or the top 75 on the FedEx. It is now more boosted field this year in Kentucky, even though it is an alternate.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting people in the field because it's a co-sanctioned event with the DP World Tour. So you have a big mix of people coming from all around the world with the same goals to get into the British Open because the winner qualifies for the British Open and this is their last chance to get there. And it's a big major. So a lot is on the line and there's a lot of interesting people and I'm curious to see what will end up happening. It's the first time ever, I believe, an amateur is favored. Luke Clanton, who's come
Yeah, betting
back to
favorite.
back top 10 weeks on the PGA Tour, now in this alternate with not as big names as he's been playing against. Who knows? Maybe he could make a bid for the top.
Yeah, and it'll also just be interesting to see what DP World Tour player kind of makes a run at their shot, because it seems like every year in this event, or any alternate event for that matter, there is a foreign player that makes a run because it's a much more global field compared to the average week on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, and I'm curious how these players coming from literally across the world on such short notice, people alternate someone that just found out they had to travel to Kentucky, like how do they mentally prepare? It would be hard, especially if it's your first PGA Tour event ever. Um, so yeah, I'm looking at the top people in the field. Alejandro Tosti is the top ranked OWGR, and yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of solid
It's
names in the field. Michael Kim, Ben Silverman, SH Kim, Carson Young. Yeah,
it's definitely a lot of younger players though at the top of the power rankings for this event, like Michael Thorbjornsen and Luke Clanton, both young stars under 24. Both have already been putting on high performances on the PGA Tour. I could see either of them doing well this week. It's just such a cool field when you have players like that, players maybe getting their first chance on the PGA. Very interesting mix. That's what makes this event so unique.
yeah, and again, I feel like a lot of things could happen, but it's probably going to be one of those top names. It would be a surprise if it came from a random, say, DP World Tour player. Someone I'm looking at who I'm biased because he's who I'm rooting for, but Carl Yuan hasn't won on the PGA Tour, but I've been really hoping that he will soon because he's come close quite a few times, and in an alternate like this, it's not as stacked of a field, so the competition isn't as great. So who knows? Someone like him could have a good run in Kentucky this week and get into the British Open, and that's big for these guys. Getting into the British Open is one of the best things you can do as a professional golfer, and to get in with a win, that I mean, there's no better way to do it.
Yeah, and you can almost guarantee that whoever wins this week, it will be their first PGA win. Yes, there's some people that have one or two, but that is definitely the minority. Most of these guys are looking for their first PGA Tour victory. A lot of them, though, the foreign guys have won on either Challenge Tour or DP, but a lot of these foreign players, it is their first PGA event of all time, which is really unique and cool. A player that I'm looking at on the PGA that I think could make a run this week is Garrick Higgo, the left-hand South African. He's had some really good weeks in the past. He did have a wrist injury that he suffered a couple months back, but he's bounced back from that. Played well at the John Deere last week, so you never know. He can make a run. One of the top-ranked players in the field, too.
Yeah, and then you have, I mean, Harry Hall is a name that stands out for me because he's really shown that he has the potential to win and compete with the big dogs.
Multiple top tens.
And again, with this being an alternate, it's the perfect opportunity for someone like Carl Yuan, someone like Harry Hall, to capitalize and get a PGA Tour win and ultimately secure his status for the next 2 years. It's a big way to keep yourself in the PGA Tour with it not being as hard as, say, winning the John Deere Classic.
Yeah, it's really interesting to look at just the backgrounds of some of these players. I mean, you've got people as high as 107 on OWGR and as low as 700, 800, all in the same event. And obviously, each round is different. You could have a very interesting mix coming Sunday. Just last year, even Vincent Norman, who did win last year, and now is in the top 75 on the FedEx Cup for that matter. He was playing in the final group and won a playoff against Nathan Kimsey, who that was his first PGA event and still has been his only PGA event. Just a very interesting mix looking back on it. It's a really unique event, and it will be interesting how players like Kimsey in this year's event fare, although he isn't playing in this year's field.
Yeah, I'm curious to see the DP World Tour players, and yeah, Kimsey last year. There's usually one guy that makes a big run at formerly Barbasol, now Isco
At
Championship.
King
Gonna
Trace
have to
Golf
get used
Club.
to that. It's a easy golf course for these guys, but which makes it fun to watch. And like we said, we're going on Sunday. It's a really fun golf course. It's again, these guys really get after it. There's usually some low scores, but in my opinion, that makes it all the more fun to watch. And yeah, it should be a very entertaining finish, a very entertaining week. But I just want to hear from Nash. Who do you think is going to win? Who are the names that stand out to you?
Yeah, well, like I've said, Garrick Higo is someone that I think definitely has a shot, and I would really like to see him win. Um, Another name that I've seen that I really think is intriguing is SY No, the Korean golfer who's been doing really well on the Korn Ferry Tour this year, looking to regain that PGA Tour card. He lost it just this past year. He's had some really good finishes down on the Korn Ferry Tour. I could see him doing well, along with the other Korean player mentioned earlier, SH Kim, who does have a PGA card. Both of those guys I could see doing really well this week, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential for people who haven't had it much, if any, success on the PGA Tour just get their career going
Yeah,
with a win this week.
Yeah, another name I was going to mention, I forgot to, was Jaden Shaper, the young South African. Played really well in this event last year, top 15 in his first PGA event. Clearly knows the course well, obviously, and I could see him having another good finish. Would love to see it. He's one of the guys I will be most rooting for this week. Would be awesome if he could have another top 15 here.
Yeah, and I've got to give a shout out to Michael Kim because if if any of you aren't familiar with him, he's been a Twitter king the past few months in the golf world, just tweeting after every week and giving his thoughts on each tournament.
And behind the scenes
He's
stuff as
a
well.
former PGA Tour winner, won the John Deere a few years ago, so he's one of the most talented players in the field. I'm excited. I hope we can see him because, again, he's a bigger name. And yeah, then you have people like Rico Hoey who did very well on the Korn Ferry Tour last year. We saw him at the Korn Ferry Tour Championship, and now here he is on the PGA Tour with the chance to win. So it's full circle for these guys coming from a tournament in the Korn Ferry Tour all the way to the PGA Tour and actually having a good shot at winning. So
Yeah, another thing that's really cool about this tournament and about any tournament going on right now that I'd like to point out is there are some players in the field that will be competing in the Olympics in a few weeks. Originally, there were 6 in the field, but Gavin Green from Malaysia and CT Pan, who I really would have liked to see, they both dropped out. They both withdrew, but there are still 4 players in the field that will be competing in the Olympics in Paris in a few weeks, and those are Carl Yuan and Zheshang Do
for
from
China,
China, and Rafa Campos from Puerto Rico, and finally Fabrizio Zanotti from Paraguay. the only Paraguay golfer on tour. Would be interesting if he could make a run. This is his first Isco Championship.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that too because the Olympics are one of my favorite events, and for golf too. And having both Chinese golfers there is really cool too because I I'm really hoping those are two of my favorite golfers, especially Carl Yuan, and the fact that they'll be at the Olympics in a few weeks just makes it all the more special to see them right now. Plus, they have a good shot at winning, so hopefully.
Yeah,
But
I
but then there's other names, young names like we've mentioned, but Thor Bjornsson and Clanton really anticipated this week because they've been on such a roll.
yeah, and also John Deere. Those two performed really well, but same did Carson Young, another young player who's in the field and has his chance at his first PGA win. Um, Done very well in alternate events in the past, so you could definitely see him with a high finish. Someone I'll personally be rooting for that I'll be interested to see how he fares is Hayden Barron from Australia. He was the top alternate for this event from the DP World Tour, and this will be his first PGA event. I will be really rooting for him. Hopefully, he makes the cut and hopefully he performs well. But very interesting to track players like him who will be their first appearance on a stage this high.
And speaking of the Aussies, Aaron Baddeley has won this tournament before. He's in the field. Watch out. I mean, clearly he's familiar with winning around here. So, good shot at winning for him, I'd say, too. And Troy Merritt as well, has also won. So, it's always interesting to see how past champions will do, but also newcomers like Clanton and Thor Bjornsson because they have been on such a roll. But when you're there's a difference between being the amateur that makes a big run and being the favorite. That adds some extra pressure. So I'm very curious to see how those two will do, especially Clanton.
Yeah, and then another cool player in the field. We've already named a lot of players, but Neil Shipley is in the field. He will be a fan favorite that a lot of people will be watching this week. He was the low amateur at the U.S. Open and PGA Championship, a rising star already from Ohio State. Really fun guy.
One of the sponsors exemptions this week, so they really want to see him here.
He's been playing well as a very young 20-year-old, 21-year-old. So will be interesting to see how he does as well.
Yeah, clearly, as we've said, a lot of names to look out for this week, a lot of names to be excited about, and I'm sure it's going to be an entertaining week of golf, not only in Kentucky, but in Scotland too, with the Scottish Open.
Yes, indeed. The event Genesis Scottish Open does really tie into the ISCO because a lot of those higher tier players in the ISCO were one of the alternates for the Scottish Open. Therefore, some of them have left for that field. But that's what makes this event interesting is that it's really a decision between the players. Do I want to go travel and play in that as one of the lower tier players, or do I want to have a chance at possibly my first PGA win here in Kentucky? So that's what makes this field more jacked than last year. There are more players, I'd say, this year that decide to stay in Kentucky.
Yeah, the big dogs will be in Scotland, but there's some big names in Kentucky as well. So both fields are great. Both tournaments will be great. And I hope you watch it. We will be. And we'll be in Kentucky on Sunday. So I'm really excited for that. We went there last year and it was an absolute blast. Met a few players. It was really fun. So hopefully we can do that again. And hopefully there's a good winner. And hopefully there's another playoff because I also loved that last year. But that's us.
That will be hard to beat. That finish was great last year.
Yeah, it definitely was. Well, that's us signing out. We'll post a recap after the tournament, but so long for now.
Thanks for tuning in.
Remember, you can listen to Diving into Sports on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Pocket Casts, and Stitcher. We'd love it if you could follow us on all of those platforms. And check out our Twitter account. Our handle is @Nash and Lyle.
By the way, we're now available on Google Podcasts as well.